Let's get things kicked off. I'd like to first thank you for joining us for SEMA's 4th Industry Talk, Back to Business. Today's event is hosted by SEMA's Emerging Trends and Technology Network, and the topic is Pivoting in the Pandemic, Technologies to Move Us Forward. During this hour, you will hear our industry panelists discuss strategies and technologies they have implemented within their businesses that have guided them through the COVID-19 pandemic and where they are now as a result of those changes. I'm pleased to be your host today. My name is Lehn. I'm the CEO of BOOSTane, and I currently serve as the ETTN chair. I'll be offering some questions and conversation topics to our panelists to touch on and discuss. However, what we would really like is to answer some of the questions that you guys have out there directly. Hear what things are affecting you and your businesses. You can submit your questions or suggested conversation topics by entering them into the questions box within the dashboard on your screen. We'll try to address as many questions as possible as the time permits. So get those in there, and we'll hope to cover them in this hour. So without further ado, let's get things started and get to know our panelists. The first panelist I'd like to introduce is Ben Knaus from Hellwig Suspensions.
Hi,
hey, Ben.
Yeah, so my name is Ben Knaus. I'm the Director of Operations and Engineering at Hellwig Products, and been here a little over 9 years. And if you don't know Hellwig, we manufacture suspension components, so sway bars, leaf springs, and a lot of other stuff beyond that.
Thanks, Ben. The next person a lot of you might know is Dr. Jaime Meyer, the current president of the performance and racing industry. Hello, Dr. Jaime. Oh, you're on mute still.
These things happen now with these WebExes and Zoom calls. Hey, good afternoon, Ian and Ben and everybody. I just started with PRI in May, and just ended 15 years at General Motors, and happy to be part of the team today, and we'll share what I can with what's going on out there. So thanks, Ian, for inviting me.
Thank you very much. The next person I want to bring on is Mr. John Pulli, the CEO of Turn 14 Distribution. Hello, Mr. Pulli.
Hi, it's good to be here. Turn 14 Distribution is a performance parts distributor nationwide. I'm the CEO and co-founder, and happy to be here.
Thank you very much. And then last but not least, the famous Marla Moore, the marketing director at Legendary Companies. Coming all the way from Chattanooga. There she is.
So good morning, everyone. I'm Marla Moore, the marketing director for Legendary Companies. Legendary Companies owns, Coker Tire, Will Antiques. We have 8 companies, lots of brands. It's a fun job, and I'm really happy to be here with you guys.
Thank you, Marla. Well, hey, we have limited time together, but I'm excited that all 4 of you guys have been able to jump in with us. Again, you'll see right there that any questions, if you're attending and you have any burning questions that we don't get to cover with what I'm going to be asking the panelists, feel free to put them in that comment section, and the SEMA staff will be able to get them over to me at the end of our discussion, and hopefully we get to cover those. So please put those in there, because we definitely want to hear what's going on out there in the industry. So please do that. So let's just kick things off. Ben, I'm gonna put you in the spotlight first. From an R&D standpoint, I mean, Hellwig Suspensions does some incredible things. Are there any tips or tricks that your R&D team is using during this pandemic, to help in that design process?
Yeah, definitely. There's been a few things. I think maybe the theme for the whole discussion is going to be, everyone used to do one big thing all the time, and now instead of doing 5 little things to make up for that one big thing that's changed with the pandemic and everything going on. So for us, the design process, the hardest thing has been getting vehicles for test fits, for instruction sheet pictures, and all that. And I think we're suspension, but anyone in the automotive aftermarket really needs those vehicles in hand to do those check fits, make sure everything's good before releasing it to the public. So what we used to do is just we had really great relationships with all the local dealerships. We could swing by, grab any vehicle we needed, keep it for a day or days as long as we needed. But obviously one of the first things that would go down when COVID hit was a lot of the dealerships closed. So that cut off our resource for all those vehicles. So we've been really doing a bunch of little things to get vehicles instead. One thing we've done is we've created a hit list, is what we call it, and it's all the vehicles we need. So we actually will give an employee a $100 bonus if they track down one of those vehicles for us. And that's been hugely successful between relatives, friends, family, people from their church, people from their school. We've gotten a lot of those vehicles that we needed, and that's really helped out. And, you know, getting something to market a month earlier because we found the vehicle, the ROI on that $100 is there really, really easily. The other thing is we've been doing a lot more reach out on social media. I know a lot of people are out there, but just putting out that, hey, we need a Ram 3500. Who has one in this area that'll let us use it for a few days? And that's been really successful. And the final thing is just doing more and more with SEMA Tech Transfer, getting a lot of those suspension drawings through the SEMA Tech Transfer program, getting all the 3D models directly from the OEMs. So we can do a lot more of that design up front. So instead of bringing a vehicle in 4 or 5 times, we can get away with bringing it in once or twice for that final check fit, but not for the beginning of the design process. So yeah, a lot of little things, but it's been getting those vehicles in and keeping new product coming out.
Has tech transfer been a tool that you guys have had to lean on a little bit more during this time, you know, this period of time? And have they been able to keep that list updated? Because like you said, I mean, things are being closed down all the time. It's harder to get a hold of these vehicles and get them measured. But, you know, has tech transfer been kind of a tool that's been leaned on a lot from Hellwig?
Yeah, definitely. And we usually would use it before, but a lot more to kind of get a preview of an upcoming vehicle. Now we're using a lot more for a vehicle that has been released, maybe even a couple years old vehicle, but something they have in their library, their files that we're digging into. So yeah, like you said, using that and designing from the start, doing it all in SolidWorks, doing all of that 3D modeling instead of doing it old school underneath the vehicle and cutting up steel and parts. So it's really kind of elevated us technologically. Yeah, we've been leaning on that tech transfer a lot lately.
That's cool. That's cool. Marla, for those out there that don't know, was actually the chair for ETTN just before I took the seat. But one of the initiatives that you kicked off in your last year of chair was the vehicle sharing program. You know, which is, it seems kind of like a useful tool that Ben's discussing. Would you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I think I don't know, obviously Rob's not on here, but Ian, of course, you and Rob Simons and Gabe were all very, very instrumental in putting that together. You know, we all come up with the problem of not being able to have a vehicle to actually test our products on once we get the products done. So you have to put out your feelers to see if you can get one or go like I used to do and tell a dealership I'm going for a test drive and then don't bring it back for about 8 hours. But you know, somehow you got to get your hands on those vehicles. So the share program is really a great way for manufacturers that might be kind of close in the same vicinity or, you know, not too far away from each other to be able to say, hey, I've got this vehicle and we're doing our parts on it, and if you'd like to borrow it, you can. It's pretty much an agreement between the two companies. SEMA will help you find the other company that's willing to do that, but it's an agreement between the two companies, how you want to share the vehicles, what kind of testing you want to do. I think it's really a great way for us to work together. I mean, we're the biggest group of small businesses in the country, and you know, it's always good to find a way to help one another.
Cool. I appreciate that. There was one comment that came through that I think is a little bit relevant to this. Jason Sakurai says, we're going to where the vehicles are. The new Bronco will be at the Detroit 4Fest. There will also be some interesting vehicles from FCA there too. Same with Texas 4Fest, if that's closer to other SEMA members. So there are events that are happening that might be the opportunity to kind of get your hands on some of those newer vehicles, and you know, whether it's measuring or just just putting eyes on new vehicles, it's definitely helpful. But well, hey, thank you guys. The next question I'm actually going to throw at John. Is one of the larger WDs in the country, and with the most recent acquisition of a peer WD, have you noticed a change in sales through this pandemic, or do you feel that there'd be slowing down as things begin to return to normal?
There's definitely been an increase in sales. I think everybody's seen that over the past few months since the middle of April. I see that slowing down, but more in line with the typical slowdowns seasonally that we see in the September, October. I don't see us falling off a cliff in the near future. Everybody's stuck at home and people are going to keep working on their cars. So as long as you have a way to get to the do-it-yourselfers, I think you're going to be doing well. Acquisition was interesting, but I think it was good for us overall. We were able to bolster our team with a lot of new staff members, so it was timed right, even though we didn't know what was going to be happening. So
kind of hard to prepare for something or foresee something like this coming, but you adapt and evolve. But that's very cool. We have some other manufacturers on here. I mean, Dr. Jaime, I mean, your background, you come from the OEM side of things. I mean, is it something that you still see new vehicles coming out? Jeep just dropped the new Wagoneer. Obviously, the Bronco, I think, got everybody excited. There's tons of cool stuff still coming down the pipeline, even while it seems like everybody's locked up.
Yeah, Detroit is still very active. People are still buying vehicles. I'd have people research the data a little bit, but when I left, overall vehicle sales were down, but trucks were trending up. And even in March, April, May, when the pandemic really had people locked down, you still had turnover with folks coming off leases, or as the contract and construction industry got turned back on, you had truck sales very strong. So I see John kind of nodding his head. I'm sure Ben would agree that the truck market is on fire right now. So Ian, before I forget, I'll tell you, there's a lot of people having success in a real down market. There's a lot of companies having the best years of their history. We reported about it in the PRI magazine in the last couple of months, where Dan Schechner went and talked to the CEOs and asked a lot. What we're talking about here today is, what are they doing? What really wins? So there's resources out there to help companies that are trying to figure this out right now.
It's reassuring to hear something like that. I think you can't help but see negative things come across the wire all the time, but to hear that fellow member companies are still out there flourishing is it's reassuring that there's still opportunity out there to be had, which is why we're all sitting here.
Hey Ian, I think it was pretty scary right there in the end of April, first part of March, when the stock market dropped and all of a sudden everything had to close. I mean, all of us, I think, had some pretty drastic drops in our sales, but because obviously, we all had to watch what we were doing. John just going through an acquisition. I know, now you're having to deal with EBITDA and all of those things, and so it's hard to keep that bottom line really in check when you're going through something like that. I surveyed a lot of people, and some companies were down as much as like 75%. Others were only down like 15%, but it seems like now everybody's doing really well. I know our company right now, we can't answer the phones. They're ringing off the wall. It's just crazy. So, it's really coming back in a really strong way. I think people they're home. They're going to work on their cars. Mecum Auctions just this last month, a few weeks ago rather, at Kissimmee, I think they had $65 million in sales. So, people are definitely still looking for cars, wanting to work on them, wanting to fix them up. Mm-hmm. So it's a good thing.
Ian, just a quick comment in the sidebar. Bill Martins is from the Chevrolet team. He just commented, we're selling every truck and SUV we can build. So Marla, just supporting what the aftermarket's seeing. But watch the automotive sales. Looks like truck and SUV is going to be the hot market for the immediate future. So
Very cool.
Absolutely.
Well, it helps that our demographic kind of even before the pandemic were quarantining in their garages working on their cars all the time, so it wasn't too much of a change of pace. So that's good. But well, hey Marla, I'll put you right back into the hot seat. I mean, Coker and Legendary are very involved in the aftermarket car show scene. I mean, you mentioned Mecum, you know, the president of Legendary, Wade, is constantly traveling to these shows all the time and regularly attending cruise-ins and other well-known events. How do you think live events will proceed in the pandemic and maybe into the future?
Well, first of all, you know, I mean, obviously for our industry, a car show is our first touch point to our new customers. And we normally do about 65 shows a year. We've got like 8 tractor trailers. And then of course, we're the exclusive sponsor for Mecum. We also produce the Chattanooga Cruise-In with about 5,000 cars. And we produce the 20 city, 10-day, you know, great race. So when all of that had to come to a stop, you know, it was very disappointing when the shows canceled, not only because we love going to them, but also because it's a big piece of revenue for us. And it was also very, very difficult to make the decision to not do the great race because it was sold out. People were wanting to go, and it was really hard not to do that. But logistically, you just couldn't. So, it's been tough, but you know, we've learned to work around it. Auctions came back. Mecum started again in July with an auction, and we did pretty well there. We just had another one, of course. And so we kind of pivoted with those things by using more Facebook Live, using more YouTube, getting to those customers that way and talking to them that way. I also reached out to a lot of my contacts in the industry that had parallel products and set up programs where we're partnering with them. So we're partnering with our data so that we're able to reach out and do more projects together, email blasts together, things like that to try to expand our base. So we found some other ways. This last Facebook Live that Wade did at Mecum got over 11,000 views in the first hour or something. So, you know, it's pretty successful. So we're going to continue with that. I mean, even after all of this, after we're back on our feet again, and let's hope, I'm optimistic that next year we will be back with all of our shows again. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but when I see a really cool car going down the street, I almost want to follow him home and talk to him about his car. So, you know, I think we all want to do that, and we're ready. We want to get out there. So I think next year it's going to be good. There's going to be a lot of ways to mitigate the COVID. So I hope that by next year everything will be good and we'll be back on point again.
Well, you know, social distancing has been such a, you know, it's become a part of everybody's vocabulary, right? And it was interesting thing that we saw around, you know, our neighborhood is folks were, even before kind of the virtual aspect of things really took off, we were seeing people doing cruise-ins and basically replacing car shows by socially distancing, just going on cruises together. I kind of assume it kind of had the feel of a miniature hot rod power tour, where you're just riding around with a bunch of other enthusiasts, and you know, you're kind of yelling out the window anyway, but at 80 miles an hour, nothing's gonna get to you anyway. So it was cool to see people adapt right away and say, hey, listen, if we can't be next to each other, we just stay in our cars with our windows rolled up, and we still get to drive our cars around. But what you're saying about some of the tools like Facebook Live and the other virtual platforms that are being utilized are very interesting to see how people are adapting those in-person events to that kind of virtual platform, for sure.
You know, I've learned a lot more about influencers too on these different platforms, and you know, I'm surprised at some of these guys who are able to have an audience of 3 or 4 million views on everything that they do, and they get in there and talk about cars. So it's been really fun actually connecting with some of these people and trying to see how we can work together and work with a lot of those people. And and creating more affiliate relationships where other people, we can bring people into our family and help us sell our products.
So we've been kind of talking a little bit about kind of the consumer end of things, you know, sales, you know, how are we engaging with the customers and things like that. But, you know, there's obviously the front end of that equation, which is production and the supply part of that, supply and demand. Then, you know, at Hellwig, you guys are obviously, you know, manufacturing all the time. I mean, how have you navigated that in the climate of social distancing?
Yeah, it's been really interesting and definitely keeping us on our toes. That's been kind of my 24 hours a day job since everything went crazy in March. But like you mentioned, Ian, it's like, you know, engineers, customer service, sales guys, they can, you know, work from home, do stuff through Zoom, but our guys are, you know, forming red hot steel and working furnaces and heat treating and powder coating in house. So you can't really do that from home or telecommute to work for some big furnaces and forging steel. So we've had to really work and make sure we're keeping everyone safe, but also we are a supplier for a lot of OEs and military essential businesses, so we have to keep running parts as well. So it's been a fine balance of, you know, keeping people safe but keeping parts running. There's been a ton of things between implementing masks, but also you know, just the amount of cleaning, the amount of hand sanitizer through the shop is overwhelming. But the other things is we've really moved around shifts a lot. We used to, you know, have everyone come in at 5 a.m. That was the start of shift. Everyone at 9 a.m. would go to their lunch. 9:30 they'd come back from lunch. You know, very defined and core stuff. Now we really have a team coming in at 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 throughout the day to spread people out. Have people going on shifts, going on breaks separately. You know, spread the load on bathrooms, spread the load on locker rooms, spread the load on all that type of stuff. Additionally, we brought in, you know, porta potties. We've added as many bathrooms as possible. Just once again, spread everyone out and limit, you know, the number of people overlapping in all those areas. And yeah, it's been a really something to get used to. Everyone's used to, you know, piling into the break room, all 50 people at once and having a good time. But now, yeah, some people are going to lunch at 8, some people are going to lunch at 11:30. But it does spread people out, you know, keeps everyone safe and keeps that interaction to a minimum. And then the kind of efficiencies from that, while a lot of us would love to go back to the norm, at the same time now, there's never a time where the plant's not running. You know, from 9 to 9:30, we're making parts, whereas before we were shut down for lunch. So some of that stuff I do feel like, while it was rough getting it started, we may keep it even after we're not required to do it anymore. And there's been a lot of those little kind of silver lining moments where you're forced to get efficiencies and, you know, hiring employees, finding guys. Used to be in summer where our big peak is, we just bring in 10, 20 more guys, but it's been really hard finding guys. So instead now there's a lot more of the ROI on improving equipment, improving efficiencies, improving dies, improving tooling. So all that stuff will help us, whether there's a pandemic or not. You know, I'll take efficiencies any time of the year. So it's really kind of forced that stuff, brought that to the forefront of what our priorities are. So yeah, I think while it's frustrating and there's been a lot of scrambling and a lot of changes, there are a lot of like those silver linings to it where we're getting more efficient, we're upgrading tooling, we're, you know, really training guys better, we're working on dialing in shifts and attendance and all those type of things to get that last 1 or 2% difference that we, you know, every percent makes a difference and is really helpful. So yeah, it's been interesting, but yeah, we will keep some of that stuff even after all this is over.
That's interesting. I mean, those forced adaptations that you might not have ever gotten around to, just you've had to assess now. I mean, John, Marla, I mean, John, you're very much a part of the supply chain and constantly dealing with people in a warehouse. You know, you can't. It's pretty hard to virtually pick and pack out of a warehouse. I mean, has there been things and efficiencies that you guys have had to do in your processes?
Yeah, so we were 2 shifts a day, 6 days a week last year, and then this year our a big project was to get to 7 days a week, and we're 7 days a week. We've been doing it. We haven't made it official, but we've been doing it for 9 months just to get good at it. So we were already going to 7 days a week, and then we just basically went to 3 shifts instead of 2 shifts. And we have an hour break, and we have a professional cleaner come in and sanitize on all those hour breaks. So that was the big change for us. That basically just scooted us up 2 years in our process to maximizing the building, or our buildings. So we have 1 DC that went to 3, and then 2 DCs went from 1 shift to 2 shifts, and they're all 7 days a week. So we have distinct areas because our DCs are about 250,000 square feet. So then we also have people in distinct areas so that there's kind of 3 groups on a shift that are segmented. So we've had 7 cases in our DCs, but each time we were able to quarantine it down to a shift, shut down, lose 24 hours while we do a professional cleaning, and get the other shifts while the shifts that were exposed get tested. I mean, while we're on it, since we're talking about COVID too, there's you can do the public testing and things like that, but you can also go online and buy FDA approved tests, and then you can have them. So in all our DCs, we have tests for all the employees. And if we have a positive case, we just hand everybody on the shift the tests. They go home, they mail them in, 24 hours, we get results. You got to pay a little bit more money, but I'm sure all of us would agree that shutdown time is far more expensive than waiting for CVS to get a COVID test back to you. So that's a good tip.
Cool.
I'll use that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, one of the questions I was going to ask is, do you believe you will keep any of these processes in place? But it sounds more like the question should be posed, are there any processes that you won't keep? I mean, it sounds like, kind of these forced efficiencies, for lack of a better term, are things that you guys were either already looking to do, or and just it moved the timeline up, or you always wanted to get around to, but we're pushed to do it now. Is there anything that you don't think will continue?
Just the fact that we don't, so a big problem with shift switchover is not being able to have a 15 minutes or something for people to talk about shift swap. So shift swap is a real hassle, having an hour break. I mean, the cleaning's nice, but I'll love when we don't have to do the cleaning in between, and supervisors can talk to each other and understand what's going on. I think that's the biggest problem.
Fair enough. All right. Okay, well, let's see. So I'm going to throw this one at Dr. Jaime, obviously, because of your OEM experience. Have consumer purchase patterns changed as a result of the pandemic? I know you kind of touched on it earlier with trucks not being able to stay on lots, but there's still things coming out. There's still new products rolling out off the lines. I mean, do the OEMs kind of adjust for these types of things? Have things changed, or is it status quo?
Yeah, it's interesting because as I was going out the door, GM had sent everybody home in the first week of March, so we were adapting to working from home. So from a way up the pipeline, and for folks that don't know me, I was setting the strategy for performance parts 10 to 12 years into the future. So we were looking at a whole portfolio of electric vehicles and what do you do with those performance parts and accessories. That work can largely still go on, but you're right, as they start to become more real and they're either in clay or they're in the studio and folks are fitting up parts and engineers need access to vehicles. Ben and Marla are talking about vehicles that already exist. On the OE side, they're working math, or they've got prototype vehicles that they're fitting up parts that the aftermarket would see maybe 6 to 12 months later. So a lot of that work is going to continue. I think the retail side of the OEM is what's really interesting, right? How do you give a test drive to a vehicle in this environment? And GM and all the other OEs had to very rapidly come up with a way to clean the inside of the vehicle, and then think about the service lane. So what is that experience like for providing service or just quick repair? So they've had to adapt really quickly, but a lot of that work goes on. I think we probably all had work done to cars in the last 6 months. I know I have. For me, they'd come and pick the cars up and just returned them. and I let them sit for 24 hours, just to be cautious, things like that. But I think the purchase habits right now are interesting. I think in January, Jeff Leonard was the first guy to tell me, like, we're going to be fine. The aftermarket will be fine. He was thinking about it from 9/11. He had seen everybody go home, right? And we're all seeing it. People are home working on their cars, working on their hot rods, working on their race cars. So a lot of the parts aren't available. These guys know it. Everybody's on back order. The speed shops, I really feel for them. I was talking with Paul Spinnicky at NMCA race this past weekend, and he's got 8, 10, 12 cars stacked up waiting on parts to get finished. So that's what your speed shop is faced with. Now on the PRI side, Ian, we're looking at the racetracks and the sanctioning bodies. And state to state, the rules are different. You might only have 100 people allowed in as spectators on a given Friday night at your circle track, but people are finding a way. I just raced my Corvette at the NMCA race in Martin, and Pro Media had their big event there, Steve Wolcott. They had 653 cars in competition, the largest event in the history of NMCA. So this community is adapting and figuring it out. And I'm sure the other panelists will talk about the shopping habits, the online shopping habits, but for real live racing, it's still going on. It will get better, but we're finding a way to sell tickets.
Interesting. Did anybody want to add anything?
I think we found that in the beginning, like in April, May, June, that we found that a lot of the products that people were looking for, like maybe smaller purchases, because they were sitting at home. Now they're wanting to, clean their cars up, replace little things here and there that they've been wanting to do and fix it up. So we had to kind of look at the accessories we had and kind of push those, which normally we just really push tires and wheels, the bigger dollar tickets, but we were realizing people were wanting more smaller ticket items and things like that. You may have found that too, John, that a lot of people were just getting, new wiper blades and, just different little things that they needed to do that have been annoying them for a while. They need to get out and fix on their cars. So that was kind of in the beginning, kind of rolled that out a little bit. And the racing, actually, Jamie, I know that's been a difficult thing. I know the no prep drag racing kind of in the small tracks around town have kind of picked up, which is good for us because our Phoenix line works well with that. So there were a few bright spots here and there that we could identify and work with. But now the hardest thing right now, to what you were saying, was that customer service, trying to deal with customers who don't want to wait for these products any longer, they're like, when are they coming? When are we going to get them? And wanting to order things that we just can't get our hands on right now, and trying to get people to understand that. So there's, that's difficult. I really feel bad for all of our customer service guys that are having to deal with these customers who are really wanting stuff right now. And we're just not able to do it.
And that's going to be a point that we'll touch on a little bit more. It's the supply chains, definitely an interesting topic. I wanted to throw this one at John. John, with your recent acquisition, and I think this is, before I even say that, the next point that I wanted to talk about is, I think, something that a lot of businesses are experiencing across the country, which is, employee retention and finding new employees, while adapting. That period where folks were being furloughed, or laid off, or just being asked to work from home, and then, with PPE, there's just been a lot of things that have happened around that. And I know some businesses have found it difficult finding new employees, and then also retaining them. And it's been something that's, you've had to do it. Just what you were talking about earlier. You onboarded a bunch of new staff. How have you been able to do that? Bringing new people onto a team is extremely difficult. How do you bring them into a team when the team can't necessarily get together?
Yeah, I think that's been extremely difficult. There's all different ways to take that question. So in the beginning, we probably spent the first 2 or 3 months working with people just for current employees to get their schedules that they were going to get used to. There's some people that are 100% remote. Obviously, DC workers can't do this, but anybody in office, there's some people that are 100% remote because they have their reasons, or they come in 2 days a week, or they come in 3 days a week, or they come in 5 days a week. It took us like 3 months to get that settled out, and we basically gave everybody what they wanted. We gave a little bit of pressure to push back and make sure they really needed what they wanted, but now everything's set from that. So then building forward, we have to have somebody choose that, and everybody's making that choice until the end of the year, and then we'll figure it out next year. When we bring new staff in, we onboarded 67 staff in the last 2 months, so it's been crazy. We have a buddy system. We have the typical training, but then we also have a buddy system so that there's somebody that has to take the typical training plan and walk them through it, like hold their hand the entire time, since people are remote, and like calling them all the time and calling them every day to get them used to it. That's the only real way we've been able to do that, because hiring managers can't manage that many people. They should be doing it, plus a buddy, a more senior member on the team. We have just a flat out 10% over need for HR just to deal with outage. So if we have 200 people in warehouse operations, you know, they're approved to go up to 220 because there's so many just outages now. So every department has 10% overage automatically approved. We had problems until the middle of August when the $600 ended, basically. Then the floodgates opened, and we added a lot of people since then when people had to come back to work. Another tip and trick is when we were looking for, you kind of go to the same well when you're looking for a customer service agent or an AR agent or a third shift person. So a really good thing we did was we target people in jobs that are gone. So we filled our third shift in our DCs by going after bar managers and their associated wait staff. So I have supervisors that have supervised bar operations with wait staffs, and none of which exists anymore. But I would rather teach them how to run a DC at night and do receiving or returns than not have a job anymore. So I think that's the best thing I can suggest. Finding something that's been wiped away and then making an advertisement geared towards them, retrain them into that. You can find a whole new well of people if you need people fast.
So you kind of mentioned this, and I get this applies very much to the office, you know, the office staff, the HR, the sales, you know, everybody in the office, you know, and maybe it's not so much just finding new people, but, you know, broadening your reach for talent. You know, you mentioned that you have some people that are coming into the office once a day, or once a week, twice a week, 5 times a week. But those people that are working 100% remotely, I mean, is that something that broadens that reach for all of our businesses? You know, whether it's, whether it's a WD or a manufacturer or somebody. I mean, we all have those, office personnel, and we're always looking for the best talent to put into our team. Has this forced virtual workspace kind of opened our eyes to the opportunity that maybe we can, be effective remotely?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's yin or yang, mustard or ketchup. Like, what's your choice? Like, I like working with people and interaction. I'm going to throw it out there that I think people are 80% effective when they're remote. I'll support remote people and they'll be remote. It's really hard when you're in a leadership position to run hundreds of people and not be talking to other people that you're doing it with. Anybody that's doing that on this panel has to feel that. So the remote is a kind of a need, but I don't want to gear the company towards being 100% remote. We have locations in 7 states, so we'd rather just have them come to those locations and then be with the team. We do have some remote people, and I'm sure we'll have remote people in the future, but it's not going to lead to me changing the company and having everybody remote and these small little offices, because I think you lose something. I feel like you can go too far with this. Everybody spread out, nobody sees each other anymore. I mean, I feel like it's a deteriorating effect over time, and the only reason we've done so well with it is because we've been bonded so tight for the 15 years or so. But if we did this for another 15 years, I don't think it would work nearly as well. That's just for my own company. I'd love to hear what everybody else thinks.
Yeah.
You know, I'm really grateful that we're an essential company, that I get to come to work too. So I'm with you, John. I'd rather be in the office every day and around people. I do have some team members, though. I do have a few that work remote, and they're doing a fantastic job. Actually, I'd say some of them are probably working. I'm getting more work from them than they ever did in the office. So that's kind of cool. You know, and you do have positions like that. If you have, you know, web developers, writers, people like that who are pretty much to themselves all day long anyway. We've gotten to where we use Skype and Zoom a lot to talk to people. We use Zoom for doing interviews. I'll use Skype with my team all the time. So it's not bad, but there's definitely other positions that just would not work. The people, you know, it takes a certain kind of personality to want to be isolated at home to start with. But I think there are other positions where you can get a much more qualified, better employee if you're allow them to work from home, like a web developer who pretty much just keeps their head in the computer all day long anyway. So, you know, you have a better range for some. So I think it's going to be a mix, I think, in the future. I think that's one of the things that is going to change in our industry quite a bit is now realizing that there are positions and people and things, and that we have to be open to that idea to get the best employees we can.
That's interesting. I mean, yeah, it sounds like from both your experiences that it's very case specific, and that, you know, not everybody's the same. You know, some people like standing desks, some people like sitting down, you know. So you know, I think everybody has the way that they're going to be a little bit more efficient, but you know, maybe it's an opportunity to get that talent abroad. So thank you guys.
One thing that I think is going to be helpful is like adding a fringe benefit where people can, you know, do it 30 times a year or something like that, work from home. I think that really works when people can, you know, not have to take vacation time if they want to work from home a couple times a week or a year. I think that'll stick.
That's a very cool idea, John. Giving, you know, it's not necessarily, you're not taking vacation, but you know, if you can be effective to work remotely, and be able to do it from, you know, your cabin or your summer house or something like that, you're still putting in the time, but hey, I'm writing that one down for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's a cool idea.
You should be good at this by now, Ian. You're all over the place.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's going to be good though for like incremental weather type things when it's really bad out and stuff. If your employees are already set up to be able to work from home instead of, you know, putting their life at risk trying to get into the office.
Yeah.
So it's going to be
everybody's home offices have grown definitely recently. But well, hey, we'll keep going. Dr. Jaime, I mean, PRI coming. We might have skipped one. Well, maybe not. There it is. I wanted to, you know, I wanted to kind of pose this question. You know, we've already, you talked about it from the OEM standpoint of, you know, service folks and, you know, communication in between, you know, dealers and consumers and things like that. But I wondered if you could offer any perspective from a PRI standpoint. I mean, you know, the show's still on board for the end of the year. You know, how has that communication channel changed? I mean, is it, you know, we don't have the shows that we were usually coming in contact with each other anymore.
Yeah, I think John and Marla, you know, good job describing what it's like working from home for your team. When we were warming up in the green room, I got a note, and for the folks that just joined us, that the GM just sent out a notice that their non-essential staff will be working from home through July of 2021. So you can see where the OEs are forecasting this is going to be like this through July next year. Yeah, briefly, communications, and I think the retailers are probably doing a great job of this. If you got a strong digital presence, if you had a strong email mailing list, an active way to communicate with folks, you're in good shape. If not, you're probably wondering why everybody else has customers and you don't. So at PRI, really effective with the email campaigns. We have good data on who has come to the show over the years, and our exhibitors are certainly a very strong group of companies, so we're able to talk with them that way. And if you're paying attention, we're putting a renewed emphasis on lots and lots of racing content on the PRI social channels, just to draw that audience and be able to have a conversation with folks that are living the racing lifestyle. And it pays off, right? If you add value to people's lives, they're going to want to have a conversation with you. And that's what our end goal is, to be there for the racing community. So that's some starters on that topic, Ian, but that's where we're headed as a community. Perfect.
Yeah, and I know we kind of talked about it earlier. I put it on the docket because I wanted to kind of hear the perspective of OE and the PRI side of things, and you had already touched on the OE side. So no, that's interesting.
Let me add one more thing. As GM was transitioning to at-home workforce, they found it a very effective time to do training with a much bigger distribution than we're talking about with most aftermarket companies. So 4,500 dealerships, and the accessories team was having good traction with at-home training. So it might be a good time for aftermarket folks to reach out to their distribution partners. And just a reminder on your product line, just a reminder on how to sell your products, how to make money selling your products. Might be a real good time to reinvest in some training right now.
Virtual training is very accessible at the moment.
Yeah.
No, thank you. So I'm gonna jump around a little bit more, and I'm gonna kick this to to all of you guys. And it's funny, Ivan Snyder on the group chat actually brought this up as well. We've all talked about how demand has stayed or even gotten better through this time. Everybody seems to be quarantining in their garages and working hard and buying stuff from everybody. But the reality of the situation is that there were still some shutdowns. I mean, California is a huge supplier to the automotive aftermarket, and they shut down very much at the beginning of the summer. And as a result, the result of the demand staying where it was and the shutdowns happening, supply has been a really difficult thing that we've all had to kind of try to adapt to, especially as manufacturers. And I'm sure, John, you're once removed from a manufacturer, so I mean, I'd imagine that you're dealing with back orders all the time. But Ben, I wanted to throw it at you first, because you're on that front line of, you're talking about hot roll and steel and stuff like that. It doesn't get any more at the beginning of the production than that right there.
Yeah, definitely. That's been number one challenge, has been making sure keeping everyone safe. But number two, but we're real close behind that, is just trying to get parts out the door, getting parts in the door to ship out, finding that raw material, all that stuff. And it's been a huge battle. And I think that kind of like everything we've mentioned, there's a lot of little things, and you kind of have to roll with the punches. Like, if you'd asked me what parts I was worried about last week, it's a totally different list this week. So it's changing, hour by hour, versus before, for a month, it might be one company's an issue, one vendor's an issue, but now it's just so quick, and you have to just stay on top of it. But I think, everyone always, the goal is to have, backup supplier for a part. But now we're getting into where we have 2, 3, 4 backup suppliers for a part, onboarding new companies, doing business with people we've never done business with before, finding new steel suppliers, looking at all these different things. Whereas, before we'd always have a huge blanket for months with a certain guy for a steel. Now we're maybe buying that steel from 3 or 4 different places, and every day we're making the call. All right, this guy's 5 cents a pound more expensive, but he can get it to us 2 weeks earlier, and fighting that battle too, because it's getting stuff on time, but also that affects cash flow, it affects lead times, it affects all that type of stuff. So it really does filter through the whole company. So, focusing on using steel as an example, our steel lead times have gone a lot longer. So just from that alone, we've really had to up our AR department, make sure we're getting paid because we need to pay those steel guys, because now we're bringing in maybe 8 weeks worth of inventory instead of 4 weeks worth of inventory, really staying on top of all that stuff and, shifting between all those guys. But then, like, if you look at our parking lot right now, there's all these little things you don't think of. Now we have 8 weeks worth of inventory. Where are we going to store it? So now part of our parking lot is now steel storage. So there's all those little things that force your way through. We've really been working with customers on forecasting, because same thing, if we're having to order 8 weeks out, we need to work with our customers to know what they're going to need 8 weeks out. So yeah, like the supply chain thing is what I live all day, every day. And yeah, I think the biggest thing is find as many new suppliers, new vendors, spread the load as much as you can, see who else may provide that steel, provide that weird part, so you have those backups. Because what we found is someone who may be on top of it, a great customer, all of a sudden a few guys in their plant get sick and they're out for 2 weeks, and you have to have that backup ready, because you don't want to wait to hear that news and then start looking for the new supplier. So it's really finding backups, staying on top of your AR, ordering earlier, and then talking to customers to try to find out what they're going to need further out so you can plan for it.
Have you guys had any other similar experiences with supply chain interruption, and how to get how to work around it?
Yeah, we have for sure. We've had most of our tires are made here in the United States, so that has been pretty good. But we do have suppliers that are overseas, and we work a lot with Michelin, real close with them, and they immediately shut down all of their plants overseas. There's several other suppliers in India and the EU that shut down, and a lot of those still are not open. So we're still dealing with some of those supplies. We have had to resource new suppliers on different products and different things. Phone lines, I think, John, you mentioned this too. You mean people, and so did Ivan there, talking about the orders coming in. I mean, we've had to add dozens of phone lines to our sales department just to try to keep up with all the calls of the people calling in trying to order. We've added messaging for them, so if you get tired of waiting to get your call answered, you do messaging. And before this, I would say that a customer never stayed on a phone more than 30 seconds before they were answered. And now it's like, there may be hundreds of calls we can't even get to, because it's so busy. It's so crazy, people calling in. Most of those people are buying product. Some of those people are just checking again on their back orders, because there's so many back orders right now.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a problem.
I was going to say, from my side, it is concerning, the back order problem, because we're the pipeline and we're really empty. We're half of what we would like to have as normal inventory. It's fallen every day it fell every day from the middle of April until the middle of July, and then it has stayed steady, but we have not started to refill the pipeline. And I think it's going to take, I know it's going to take 3 months for manufacturers to refill that pipeline and get us back to inventory. So the back orders are just a major issue. The best thing manufacturers can do is make sure they keep back orders in order and do the normal things that manufacturers do, which is, do them in the order which they're placed and things like that. I've unfortunately seen some manufacturers stop that and or try, they get freaked out and they cancel all back orders and things like that. And it's just a nightmare. I mean, it's really hard to explain to shops that have had things on back order that everything's canceled. Some larger manufacturers have gone to shipper cancel, which is basically canceling all back orders and then going to a shipper cancel. So I think that's really scary for the industry. From my perspective, it sends the wrong message. So I would be wary of doing that as a manufacturer. I know you're just trying to get out from under it, but if we can't refill the pipeline, then it scares people. It concerns them.
I think the one reassuring thing is I guess trying to look at it a little bit of the glass half full. It is across the same.
You should be we should all be happy the sales are there. Yeah.
Yeah. Business is still going, but we're all experiencing that supply kind of hiccup. So we'll all get caught up eventually. It's just going to take some time. Is what I think people are realizing. I know at our business we've had to kind of look inwards for solutions, and it's developing some efficiencies from a manufacturing standpoint, so we can be a little bit more mobile, where we don't have to go out and look for third-party solutions. We've kind of taken them under our own umbrella, so that we have a little bit more versatility to that. So, but it's just we'll work through that. So, but thank you.
I think the other thing too is just kind of like to John's point, like be honest and handle it correctly. This is kind of when company's true colors come out, and people remember that a long time after this is all over. So, if you are going to be late, just be upfront with it. If you are going to back order it, be upfront. Treat all the customers the same. Don't play favorites or do, raise prices after it's been back. There's all these little things people can do out there, but that may sound good for the next 6 months, but it'll bite you a year or 2, 3 years down the road. So don't forget about that. But yeah, kind of keep the honesty, keep that golden rule. Treat the people you're working with the way you want to be treated, because our industry has a long memory too. So remember.
I completely agree with what you're saying there, and we've seen that across the board from suppliers. So obviously,
take care of each other. Yeah, take care of each other for sure. Okay, so I'm gonna throw one quick at the SEMA staff. We're gonna skip ahead a few questions because there's 2 more that I want to sneak in, because we are running short on time, and I'm definitely, I like being a stickler on time. I want to throw one to everyone, and it's just 1 or 2 sentences. We'll start with Marla. I always like putting Marla in the spotlight. What, if any, changes in business do you feel will outlive the pandemic?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think a lot of companies, we were fortunate in the fact that we already had a very strong e-commerce, a strong direct-to-consumer marketplace. But I think a lot of companies really that opened their eyes that they needed to have that they needed to figure out how to create some type of direct-to-consumer sales. The other is obviously working remote. I think we are going to find that we're going to be a little bit more easier to work with that. I think that's something also our industry has never really given a lot of thought to until now, and so we're going to have to find ways to do that.
Cool.
I guess I think those are the 2 things that are probably going to move forward. And again, what the other guys are saying is also, finding better ways to stay in contact with our customers, making sure that we're getting back to them, we're contacting them a lot, and using new technology platforms like Facebook Live and doing more YouTube and Instagram and things that, a lot of companies were already doing, but I think they're finding that those are going to be more and more powerful as we move forward.
Cool. Does anybody have any other ones they want to throw out there they think that might outlive this whole thing? Dr. Jaime?
We've seen people get locked in their homes, and then a little bit of relaxation of that, and they've immediately wanted to go and experience things. So I would remind everybody, watch for those opportunities to help a car show, look for that local racetrack that makes sense for your products and your brands, because people are going to start going out and doing a lot more things. They're building cars, they're building trucks, and they're going to want to go experience life again, not just live in this virtual world. So get ready to take advantage of that.
Ben or John, you got anything?
Yeah, I just say, I kind of talked a lot about, we're adding efficiencies in the plant, we're adding, new suppliers, we're, kind of pitting vendors against each other to get better pricing, better lead times. So that's all because of what's happening right now, but don't let that slide once it's over. I think, we're putting tons and tons of time and money and hours into building up all these processes and making everything more robust. But when times are good, don't forget those lessons and kind of try to keep, a year, 2, 3, 4, 10, 20, 50 years down the line, kind of remember those lessons, keep those efficiencies, and don't prevent the backslide, because it's easy to validate the ROI and stuff to making those changes now, but keep that in mind and don't let it change later on.
Get a little lax.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would agree with Ben, and I would just say it's a stress test, something like this. So automation and redundancy is always, good things for a business. If you have those things, you're not going to struggle as much. So just keeping your finger on that.
Well, hey, I think that's we've come to the end of things now, but I think those are all awesome points that we can, we and everybody, all the attendees can take away from this and kind of, leave echoing in everybody's mind. So, I'd like to thank you to all of our panelists for sharing your insight with us today, and thank you to all that attended. We hope you found some value in today's discussion and are walking away with a few things you can apply to your own businesses for the future. SEMA has hosted a few other industry talks, believe it or not, and back to business discussions in the previous weeks and months. And you can view them on demand at SEMA.org/reopen. So be sure to check out all of SEMA's COVID-19 resources at SEMA.org/Corona updates. And if you're interested in learning anything about ETTN, please visit SEMA.org/ETTN to join us and take advantage of all the resources and opportunities we provide to engineers and technical professionals in the industry. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. Thank you to all the panelists. It was awesome. I wish we addressed a lot of the questions that were in the comment section. But any other questions, feel free to keep dropping them on the ETTN page. Thank you, everybody, for joining in, and have a good Labor Day weekend.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
See you guys.
Bye, guys.
Hi, everyone.